Hey Internet, I am Mike and this is Mike Jones Knife and Tool, and today we're going to be putting a new handle on an old hammer. So first order of business will be to remove the old piece of handle out of the eye, and we're going to save these round wedges as well. This is just an old head that he found. It's made by Vaughn, which is an American company. It's a really good shape. It's a good hammerhead for sure. It's got the little slot in the top where you can rest a nail with the magnet in there and set it one-handed, which is nice. And we're just going to be putting it in this run-of-the-mill store-bought hickory handle. They're not great, they're not perfect, but they do the job, and especially for just a workhorse hammer like this, framing hammer, it's going to be perfect. So I'll show you how I do one of these. So I got her chalked up in my vise here, and first thing to do is to get rid of those old wedges. There's a couple of ways that you can do this depending on the shape of the head and what kind of wedges are in there. Because these are the round ones and they take up a lot of room, you can't really drill out very much material. Sometimes you just take a normal wood drill and in a cordless drill and just drill it out, but these take up a lot of room. There's no real proper way, I guess, to get these things out. It's really just a lot of fighting with it until you can loosen them up and pop the wedges out, and then the wood should pound out pretty freely. A lot of the time I'll just use an old flathead screwdriver and just work around it and get it out. Luckily one of them is already really loose, so it'll come out, and it'll have a bunch of the wood still kind of stuck in there. So you just work that free as well. We'll get the other one out, and then the wood will come out, and we'll start from scratch. Alright, so that's got her. She's all clear and empty. There's the big one. Came out with a bunch of wood still stuck in it, but that's real easy to pop out of there. I've got this really old cold chisel that it's really dull, and I shamefully don't mind pounding on the sharp end of it just to use it as like a drift. Come on now. So I got all the wood worked out of the little circular wedges there. Whatever means necessary to get them out. Don't get too frustrated with them because they are designed specifically to not come out. Same with the wood and the axe head and the wedge, so just keep in mind they're just doing their job. Alrighty, so there you have it. There's all the pieces. Got all the wood worked out of them. They're the same thing. Whatever you got to do to get them cleaned up. And the eye of the hammer there. If this was some old heritage axe head or something cool like that, I might go at it with a bunch of sandpaper, clean it all up, clean the rust off. But because it's just going to be a workhorse framing hammer, you can go ahead and pretend that I did that if you need to. Next is to deal with this store-bought hammer handle. Like I say, they're not perfect. You get what you pay for, but at the same time they're like 10 bucks, and for me to try to make one of these out of a piece of stock hickory, it would be more money in hickory than the 10 bucks that this thing is. So sometimes for something like this, it's definitely worth it. But there's a couple of little things that you want to do first. So one nice thing is that these things do come with a wedge. Sometimes they'll actually come with metal step wedges and things like that, which is even better. So first of all, we'll get that off, put that aside for later. Next, they come with a little staple in the bottom for hanging them on the shelf or whatever. Don't just pound that in, that's silly. Get rid of it. Might need some pliers. There we go, nice and clean. Camera focus. Beauty. Stickers, you want to get rid of those obviously, and then like all store-bought tools with wooden handles, this thing comes with a big thick coat of shellac on it. It's like a plasticky cured coating that's gross. It'll give you blisters if you use it too long without gloves on. So for all of my tools and handles that come like this, I always take some sandpaper and get rid of that. It doesn't take long, and it makes such a difference. As you can see on the bottom here, probably it's all the plasticky drips that built up on the bottom. That's That's what's on your handle, and to hang on to that all day, it's no better than just having a rubber handled or plastic handled hammer. It's stupid. This is just a scrap piece of 80 grit from leftover from a handle, knife handle I shaped. And like I say, it doesn't take very much time. Try to sand with the grain, like always. And it just takes a little bit, and you get back down to actual wood again. So clean all that crap off. They do that just because when they ship these things with 100 others in a box, they get banged around, especially if they got plastic tape and the sharp pieces of wedge sticking out, so they have to keep it protected enough, I guess. But once they're in your hands, you can fix that. So just keep working at it, blow it off, clean it up, and anything shiny, keep sanding away at it. And yeah, it only takes a couple of minutes and it makes all the difference. Feels like almost a handmade tool after that anyway. And then we'll see what kind of fit we got for our handle head. Not quite close, which is fine. Better too big than too small. So this guy's not quite fitting on there. It's just a touch long in that direction, which is fine. The width-wise across this way doesn't look too bad, which is good. You can sight down inside of the eye and get a really good idea of what you're working with. So, with my favorite tool, a little rasp, I'm going to take a little bit of material off of this back edge here, and then we'll just keep fitting, just like an axe head with a handmade handle. Sorry about my camera. Just like an axe head with a regular handmade handle, I'll just keep taking a little bit off and trying to fit, take a little more and try to fit it, and until we get right down onto the shoulders. Alright, now we're getting somewhere. Just going to keep it working down, like I say, until we get down here around the shoulder, because that's where we want the bottom of the axe head, the bottom of the hammer head to sit. So we're seating down pretty good there now. It's not looking bad. Yet as you hammer it down, you get that little bit of peel out that happens right along the bottom there, and that's good news. That means that it's seating down really hard, and that's what you want it to be. You also want this thing to be sitting, landing fairly flat. You want the hammer handle to be fairly perpendicular, fairly parallel, sorry, with whatever your surface is that you're hitting. You don't want this head landing all cockeyed on there and not sitting down nice and square, so be mindful of that. Also, you want to check, just like with axe heads, that everything's lining up nice and straight. We're in good shape. It's not sitting all skewed for whatever reason. Mostly when you get factory made handles, that stuff will come really easily. So I'm just going to take a bit of this bump out of here because it looks sort of ugly, and then I can actually do that with the head on. Then we're just going to drive the wedge in, clean it off, pound in the step wedges, or the round wedges as this case is. It's looking like a hammer. I gave it a little bit more love just because it's for a buddy, and honestly, if it was just for me, I'd leave well enough alone and get back to work, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. Your mechanic buddies will know what I'm talking about. The mechanic's truck is always the one that needs work. But I'm just going to clean up the little bit of peel that the head makes when you pound it down there. Just make it nice and clean. There's a minor gap right in here. I don't know if you can even see it, but tiny gap there. Everywhere else is tight. That's just from a store-bought handle. That's kind of what you have to deal with sometimes. It's not crucial, it's not going to blow out. Next we'll throw the wedge in. I'm going to put a little bit of boiled linseed oil on this guy just to help keep the wood inside of the eye and the wedge itself from drying out. It would take years to do so, but it's just one of those little touch. Then we'll pound the wedge in and we'll cut it off. Boiled linseed oil, stock standard. It's the same stuff I'll use to treat the handle once it's done. I don't treat the handle inside of the eye just because you want a lot of friction in there, and any kind of oil is not going to help your cause. I do the rubber glove thing. You don't have to. I don't care. Won't bother me a bit. We'll throw a little bit of that onto there. And I'm not going to pour any. Try to get it down into the kerf because it will spill out and end up all around the eye, inside of the eye, and ruin exactly what you're just trying to do. One thing I should have done before I oiled it, but it doesn't really matter, is this eye is a little bit narrower than the wedge, so we're going to have to shorten that a little bit. Luckily, with a nice straight grain of a hickory wedge, it's just going to pop fine for me. So I'm just going to score a little mark where I need to do this, and then I'll even do it up here so you can see. I need a new blade in my knife soon. Put the knife right in my score mark, focus my camera again, and then just push straight down nice and slow, and the hickory will snap off. Try to land my knife on top of the handle. There we go. Pretty straight. And now will be the same width as our handle. Yeah, I guess we could put a little more oil on our cut. Fine. Since I know that none of you are going to comment on it, since I don't get comments. Anyways, tap this in here. I'm going to use a metal hammer. Use whatever you want. That just gets the job done. I will also, once I'm getting down here, I'm going to take a little block of wood. Use a nice piece of ash. Use it as a block so I'm not pounding. Once we get down and I'm hitting it really hard, I don't want to be pounding with the metal hammer right on the wedge. It'll blow all over the place. This will slow that process down. If you hammer it hard enough, it will still blow your wedge out, but this will slow that down. You'll get her nice and tight without destroying the thing. So when are you done? That's a good question. I always look for the eye, this wood swelling out above the eye there. Just the way that it's flaring out like that, that little mushrooming, that's going to help keep the head on for sure. So I like to pound it until I get a really good swell, a good flare above the head of the tool, and then we'll go ahead and cut it off. So I'm going to give it a couple more taps just for good measure, and then we'll be good. Sweet. So now we'll cut that off. I use a coping saw. Nice little coping saw. It's, for some reason, it's one of those tools I put off buying for a long time because I could just use a regular handsaw or even a hacksaw. But this little guy, they're not even that expensive. It's just for some reason that's where I decided to draw the line at buying tools. Now when I cut this off, I'm not going to cut it flush with the top of the metal. I'm going to cut it down and leave like 1/8 of an inch or so sticking up, because if you cut it flush, you lose all the benefit of that flare, of the swelling. So if you leave a little bit up there, I feel like it helps keep it on just a little longer. So yeah, like I say, I'm going to leave 1/8 of an inch maybe. Yeah, get yourself a coping saw. Why not? it does a great job. So this is what we're left with. Nice and tight, nice and even. So then we'll pop the round wedges in the top there and give the handle a quick coat. So we're back to this setup again. You might have noticed there's two different sizes, and also the eye has a big taper to it. The small end's at the back, so that's where we're going to put the small wedge. And the big guy at the front, I'll start with that one for no reason other than hitting my fingers with the hammer. So I want to stay away from the metal, obviously try to keep it centered. Centered over the wedge as well. You want an even amount of knot wedge on either side of the inner diameter of this guy. Just for posterity. And then have at it. I'm going to leave it out just a little bit for now. Pound the second one in. Then I'm going to put it on something a little more solid and finish them off. So again, keep her centered. You want to stay away from your other wedge, stay away from the back of the eye. All that good stuff that you could probably figure out. There we go. All right. Maybe I'll try the back of my vise where it kind of has an anvil sort of set up there. Most vices have that flat, hard spot on the back of them. It's like a small anvil. Man, oh man, did that ever take some doing? I'd say it's safe to say that's not coming out now. Those things are in there strong. Got lots of that swell, flare, mushroom, whatever you want to call it, happening around there. She's in there strong. Alright, so now I'm going to coat this with the boiled linseed oil all over the handle. Now that we've sanded off that varnish, it'll soak it in really nice. I'm also going to treat the top of the head because that's end grain. It's going to absorb lots of oil, and now that it's wedged inside of the eye, there's no hope of it ever getting down between the wood and the metal and creating any kind of slippage in the next few years anyways. So that should stay in there and outlive the strength of the handle itself. So back to the old boiled linseed oil. Do the same thing. I like to pour a little bit in my hand, spill it all over my floor, and then give it a good solid coat. If you get a bunch on the metal itself, it's no big deal. It's actually good for it. It'll just help protect it from any additional rusting this thing might see. Lots of it. You want to get lots on top of the eye there. Peel it off the handle and redistribute it back into the eye, because that's, like I say, it's the end grain's always thirsty. It soaks up lots of it, so give that a good coating. The handle's going to take lots, and you can reapply this stuff. You'll notice your tool will start to feel dry and not like it used to. You can reapply this whenever you want. One thing that I've seen on some tools I've mentioned before is the hole drilled into the bottom and filled up and then capped with a little bit of like expanding foam or something. That's a really cool idea. I'm definitely going to try that with one of my own handles in the future, just to try it out, and then it just constantly retreats the wood from the inside out, I guess is the idea. I thought that was a brilliant idea. So, but on this one, store-bought handle, found head. We'll just see how this one holds up for my buddy. Then once you got her pretty well coated, remove your glove. Just an old rag. Get rid of the excess because you don't want to be handling a bunch of wet boiled linseed oil too much. And lo and behold, one refurbished framing hander. So there you go, Jesse. Get back to work.